Today I want to talk about kind of a funny little clamp. I don't really know much about it. I really don't even know where I got it. It's a little tiny thing, as you can see by the size of my hand, and it is threaded on both ends, and I assume there probably was another bolt at one time that went through this side so you could clamp things in the middle. Now I've used this just as a regular tiny C-clamp, and what I like about it is it's beefy enough that you can put a wrench on this and get a whole lot of torque on it, and it doesn't flex hardly at all because of its size and the way it's shaped. So it's a pretty useful little tiny clamp, albeit I'm probably not using it the correct way. But what I really want to talk about today is resurfacing metals so they don't rust. There's all kinds of ways to do it. You can paint them and you can treat them with oil. But one thing that used to happen years ago that companies used to do that they don't anymore is they would take linseed oil and they would just kind of bake the item. They would bake the linseed oil onto the item itself. Now linseed oil is nothing new. In fact, I have a bottle here and you can buy it pretty much in any store, or any hardware store at least. And there's two types. There's a raw linseed oil and then there's a treated boiled linseed oil. Now I understand by what I've read you can use either or. The linseed oil, straight raw linseed oil, is basically flaxseed oil. And it doesn't dry as fast and it's more of an oil type substance. You can still bake it on. In fact, if you bake it on, it'll give you a nice black kind of shiny, gloss to it. But if you use boiled linseed oil and you bake it on about 400 degrees, you can get a really nice amber color. And the coating is really tough. I'd say tougher than paint, tougher than even good quality paint. You can still scratch it if you dig into it, but it's almost scratch resistant when done right. Now, what I like to do is sandblast the item, because when you sandblast it, it leaves all these little, kind of dimples, microscopic, not microscopic, they're very small dimples, and it gives it kind of a nice sheen after you apply the linseed oil and you bake it. And I like to bake it about 400 degrees, and that's what we're going to do today. We'll put this in the sandblasting cabinet. We'll pull this out for sure, and we'll sandblast this C-clamp here. It'll give it kind of a nice sparkle, as sandblasting does. It doesn't give you a shine, it gives you kind of that matte finish. We'll coat it in some linseed oil. We'll put it in the oven for about an hour at 400 degrees, and we'll take a look at it. And if we're happy with the results, great. If we want a little bit darker, we'll apply another coat and bake it again for an hour. So now that we have the part sandblasted, we can pretty much apply linseed oil and bake it at 400 degrees for an hour. Now I am going to take the bolt itself, and what we'll do is we'll wire wheel it and then probably use some gun bluing on it just to give it a nice contrast. I'm just going to take a foam brush here and just kind of wipe linseed oil on it. It's pretty much that simple. And since we sandblasted it, all those little nooks and crannies that a sandblaster makes will fill up with the linseed oil. It kind of wicks a little bit, almost like a penetrating oil, which is perfect because you want this thing soaked in linseed oil. Now basically you're looking for about 400 degrees, and that'll give it a nice dark amber color. You want to leave it in there for an hour. I have a laboratory oven underneath my workbench. I bought it on the government website auction. You can buy them pretty cheap. You could use a toaster oven. You could even use your oven in your house, I suppose, as long as your wife's not looking. But we're going to do that here in the garage inside this little oven, and we're going to put a timer on it for 1 hour. While that's baking in the oven, we're going to take a little bit of this gun bluing and go over this bolt that I just freshly cleaned in a wire wheel, and we should darken it up. And the gun bluing is pretty cool because it'll make it kind of dark, almost black. It's more of a dark blue-black, but it also prevents rust. And you just take a little bit of it, and once you start applying it to the metal, it'll start turning. So you can see it's already starting to turn black. Sometimes you got to do a couple of coats, but most of the time, one coat will do it just fine. So let's go ahead and treat this. Oh, look at that. That's what we want. Nice black finish. Now here's the finished product, and as you can see, it came out really cool. The black accents, the kind of dark amber color, and this is really hard to explain. It's just a really tough coating. I like to say it's almost scratch proof. It's definitely more scratch proof than even a higher quality paint, but it's definitely something I wanted to share with you guys. If you have something that you just want to protect and you want something a little different, just go ahead and get some boiled linseed and put it in an oven, heat it up at 400 degrees for about an hour, and you'll have a really nice tough coating that will prevent rust, and looks good, and it's tough. If you like these types of videos, please take a look at some of my other videos. At the very least, you may be entertained, and please like and subscribe.